Well, we're on our way still
Yes.
to the narrow gauge convention, and as you know, we've been there for a few weeks.
We have.
We just keep showing you guys more and more stuff.
Right.
And we've shown you a lot of the train show stuff, but we'd like to go back one last time to the museum, to the California State Railroad Museum, because there's a few things there that we haven't shown you just yet. And that's also very convenient for us because we're staying there on this riverboat. And just outside our front door is the Sacramento Southern, which is the train ride that the museum has. So I think we should go for a ride. I thought we'd take one last look too at the cab forward. We've given it a glance in a couple of the shows, but while I was waylaid with my sore hip, you really got in there and filmed the crap out of it. You even climbed up into the cab here.
One thing I found out, the whole thing up here's backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, the front's the back and the back's the front. Hence a cab forward. It sure has a huge firebox, doesn't it?
Almost like the big boy.
I sure would have liked to have seen these when they were actually operating, climbing over the Sierra Nevada mountains, up over Donner Pass, through the tunnels and the snow sheds and everything. Wouldn't that have been something to see? The Southern Pacific had quite a few of these, but surprisingly, this is the only one that survived.
That's amazing.
Every other one was scrapped out.
Oh,
but
dear.
thank goodness one of them survives, and we can see it here in Sacramento. Such an unusual configuration for
Kind
one
of
of
looks
these.
like a trolley.
It does. A massive steam-powered trolley, and built by Baldwin. I always think of Alco when I think of these giant engines, but this one's a Baldwin.
Wow.
Just so neat, though. Now, one really interesting thing is this is one of the few locomotives that has its own veranda.
And its own Rosie.
And its own Rosie up there, but this huge patio. I want to set up a barbecue up there, but just such fascinating valve gear and mechanism. Just what an incredible, large, huge, just amazing locomotive.
I found it riveting.
They've got some other really fascinating exhibits here, one of which we're going to take a really close look at on Tuesday. It's a magazine. They'll make sense on Tuesday. But just everything here is so fascinating. And you were able to get inside the railway post office while I was waylaid. I couldn't get up the stairs.
I had to go up backwards and they got after me. But you know, when they have those steps, sometimes you have to choose the easier route.
And my easier route was to sit in a chair, so I let you film it. I think it's absolutely fascinating that so many of America's post offices used to be on rails.
I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that as the mail was being sorted, it was also being transported.
Yes.
Sorted and transported.
There you go.
And these guys practically lived on these things. There's a really famous British film called Night Mail.
Oh.
And it shows that process in Great Britain, how these railway post offices would travel through the night to deliver the mail the next day, sorting and transporting as they went. Just a fascinating idea, a long gone idea now.
There's so much interesting equipment, and I have no idea what most of it does.
I'd like an explanation. It's fascinating what's in here. And the sleeper car.
Oh, man.
And it's just like, it feels just like you're actually riding on a train.
This exhibit certainly did. It was rocking back and forth. You're fine.
Now this is a great exhibit. It's on a bridge. It's up in the rafters. It's a Utah Northern engine, but it's currently painted for the Nevada Short Line number 1. It was saved because this is one of the engines that got dressed up to be used as Union Pacific 119
Oh,
at a rail fair.
there you go.
This time in San Francisco. And some of these engines that got dressed up as the Jupiter or the 119 or something and sent to a rail fair got saved from the scrapper's torch just because they were used that way or they were used in a movie or something. So that's how this one managed to get saved. It's almost exactly like the one you're currently building in HON3.
It really is.
This was just a slightly earlier model than the one you just built.
Right.
Or you're still building.
Well, I'm getting the tender done.
The final touches on the tender.
Yes.
But what an absolutely fascinating, wonderful... And I love the way they've built it onto a bridge up in the rafters.
Well, that way you can see it from underneath as well.
Now here you can see it has Lincoln pin couplers, and they're showing how that couples into a knuckle coupler. And a Southern Pacific narrow gauge tank car and a box car with a hobo in it.
Yes, he looks very real.
I love the tank car. Al modeled one of these. And
He did.
it's all scratch built, of course. But isn't that neat? A Southern Pacific narrow gauge, just a fascinating railroad, and a Pacific Coast caboose. Interesting side note here, Ward Kimball used to own this caboose.
Oh, neat.
And he had it on the Grizzly Flats Railroad in his backyard.
Well, for heaven's sakes, that's
and
cool.
now it's up here on a bridge in the rafters. Meanwhile, down on the main floor, there's some more cool stuff for us to check out. There is an 1870 train down here, which we have not looked at just yet. 2 passenger cars off of 2 different Nevada railroads, and a locomotive, which is an exact duplicate of Dan's engine, the Eureka Palisade number 4. Another Baldwin 440 narrow gauge. This is North Pacific Coast number 12. The passenger cars I find really fascinating. Of course, Dan is building a passenger car to go with his locomotive, which is so similar to both of these cars. But I love anything from the 1870s, the pinstriping and the one car, just like Dan's, is a combine, so it has freight inside it.
These are my favorite locomotives.
Me too. I guess that's why I'm modeling one.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah, you are too. I'm actually building this exact engine, except I'm building Dan's, and this was the tricky part for me, the pilot.
Oh, yeah.
And I just finished that, and that's looking really nice. And I've just got a few more little details on my 20th scale, and I'll have essentially this engine only painted Eureka and Palisade number 4.
Nice.
Only 3 of these guys have survived. One's in the Smithsonian, one's in front of us right now, and the other one is Dan's.
That is really neat.
Isn't that cool? Well, I think we should now go for a train ride on the Sacramento Southern.
That's always fun.
As we mentioned, the trains depart right from our front door at the riverboat here in Old Town Sacramento. Old Town Sacramento was the waterfront. This was actually the western terminal of the Transcontinental Railroad and the birthplace of the Central Pacific Railroad. This was the head office, this little tiny building, right?
I like the looks of that.
The Big Four building, they call it, because that's where the Big Four formed the Central Pacific. And there is our hotel.
The Delta King.
The Delta King. Well, let's go for a ride.
Yes.
I really love Old Sacramento here.
I do too.
So many of these buildings are reproductions, recreations of what was here, but an awful lot of them are original.
Yeah, that's really cool.
This part of Sacramento historically has always flooded, and so when they built the new town, they built it a few miles from here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because of the flooding, I guess this part of town, instead of being killed, survived. It's just one of those weird things. This is Sacramento's famous Tower Bridge.
So beautiful. It looks like it's anodized or something.
Yeah, it's a gold metal finish, almost like gold plating or something. The video doesn't quite capture that, but it's incredibly beautiful. Sacramento's most famous landmark. This little saddle tank is the neatest engine. They just barely finished a restoration on it. We did the show on the shops, which are actually part of the museum, but they can do all their own rebuilding and restorations right here in the old Southern Pacific shops. That's really neat. It's really neat. In our show on the shops, we mentioned that in about 5 years, if they stay on schedule, the shops will be open to the public and will be part of the museum, so people can see that. That's really neat. Well, this was a fun train ride.
It sure was. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Wow, it's always fun to go ride a train. And this was not the only train ride at the Narrow Gauge Convention. We also went for a double header on the Sierra Railway.
Yes.
And that's an upcoming show, so keep an eye out for that.
Yes.
Well, it was fun.
Yes, it was.
That was an enormous amount of fun.
Oh, man.
And more stuff to come on that.
You know, normally they have a couple of different locomotives that they can run. I mean, all those locomotives that they have out there in the shop, you know. And right now they were just running that one saddle tank, but I've seen them run the Union Pacific engine, the saddle tank, not saddle tank, slope back tender train that they've got. They've got lots of locomotives. It's a museum.
Of course, they can just pick one or two.
So they've got a lot of stuff they can run on their railroad, and that's really, really neat. So this kind of wraps up the narrow gauge convention for us.
Oh, it does. What a trip.
What a trip it's been. We still have the ride on the Sierra Railroad. That was kind of a different thing. It was organized through the convention, but we did go for a double header ride.
Yes.
So that'll be an up and coming thing in a future show.
Well, if you haven't been to the channel, pop over to the channel, and if you're not a subscriber, do subscribe. It helps us out because we can say we have subscribers, and it'll help you out because you can be notified every time we upload some food. And the easy way to do that is to click the blue button. Are we ready? Sorry. Blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here on Tuesday with some other kind of screwing around.
See you.
Bye-bye.